Hey guys, Hippopotamus here, and today I'm going to be showing you my 5.5% PFE armor regen build. So, this is really good at the moment because of the seasonal modifiers, so something that I wanted to show, but hopefully this goes well, and let's get straight to it. So, for the specialization, I am using the survivalist, and the reason for that really predominantly is just the increased protection from elites. But there is a few good things in this tree that will help us. One of which would be the distributed repair. That allows us to share the medkit with teammates within 20 meters over 5 seconds. So that's really, really useful. The outgoing healing, again, not something that we're going to use, but should you equip the Mender Seeker Mine, it's going to make it that little bit more sort of potent and give it a little bit of, sort of validity, I guess you could say. The main thing is really with the status effects is that we're going to use out of this build. We have an incendiary grenade, and we also have the crossbow that make the enemies bleed. So we can set enemies on fire and we can also make them bleed, which is quite good. But we also have some other ways. We are using the Scorpio shotgun that also use status effect. So that kind of leads us on to the talent which we have here, which is the survivalist tack link. So bearing in mind, whenever we do status effects to enemies, we're going to give the entire team 10% bonus damage to that target with the status effect that's on them. We have scraping by. This can be useful, not so much for the assault rifle, but definitely so for the shotgun. 5 rounds is more useful in the shotgun. That's going to help us. And what happens is we sort of accumulate that when we do a cover-to-cover move. For every 1 second, we gain 5 ammo. So for things with larger magazines, that's just something and nothing. But for shotguns that have a low ammo pool and a low magazine, that's going to be quite useful. We also have crunch time, again 10% skill haste when we're in cover, handy when our shield's down or we just need to get the hive shots, we can just jump in cover and get 10% towards that. Especially off the hive with a high cooldown with something like 3 minutes, 10% is quite useful. We have synergizing weapons in here, and that is the shotgun and assault rifle. And those are the main points about the specialization that I can really think that come to mind. So let's go and take a look at the build and see what it does. Okay, starting here. So the first thing that I'm using is the first sight. This was from a couple of patches ago. Basically, all this is an AK-47. It just has slightly higher headshot damage. It comes with assault rifle damage, health damage, and damage to targets out of cover, exactly the way that we want it. And I also have a headshot damage mod and stability grip on it with extra rounds. So, why does the extra headshot damage matter in this case? Well, if we read the bonus of preservation, what's going to happen is it's going to give us 10% armor over 5 seconds if we gain a kill. However, headshot kills improve the repair by an additional 10%. So, by us having a little bit more headshot damage, it's going to make this talent that little bit more viable to get headshots and regularly proc that 20% over 5 seconds, which is great. So, the main weapon that we're going to be using is the Scorpio, and this thing has just been overpowered since the start of the game, really. However, the main things to note with it is just that I'm using shotgun damage, armor, and damage to targets out of cover. That's the sort of main way that we want it. And we also have the talent Septic Shock on here. Shooting a target applies stacks of venom, which lasts for 10 seconds. Increasing stacks add more severe debuffs to the target. So we have 3 status effects here. If we hit them with 2 stacks, it's poison. With 4 stacks, it's disorient. With 6 stacks, it's shock. And with 9, basically it adds a debuff where they take additional 20% damage from all sources. Again, this is super useful because combined with the fact that we're doing status effects to enemies, so that's going to give your teammates an extra 10%. You're also doing another 20 on top of that, so that's 30% that you're offering to your team extra damage. So very, very useful, helpful, and it will help the team out quite a lot. It's very good. So for the pistol, we're just using the TDI card. You can really use anything here, this doesn't matter. The only reason that I'm using this in this case is just because of the extra skill tier whilst we're holding it. This will allow me to gain an extra shot in the hive and potentially pick up an additional teammate, or pick up a teammate and then re-pick up the hive and still have the shot for myself. We are using preservation, so again, we've gone with headshot mods on the weapon just because we're trying to proc that extra 10%, which is really great. Okay, so starting with the build, the main thing to really note is just that we're using the Ninja Bike. This is going to allow us to gain, where we would have taken one piece, would gain a 2, where we've taken a 2 piece, would gain a 3, etc, etc. This comes rolled with weapon damage, armor, skill tier, also has some expertise in my gear, something that I should probably mention now. I've got 10 ranks into everything. I feel that's quite achievable. You don't need this, however, but it just gives it more like 2 million armor rather than sort of 1.9 if you have the watch levels that I do. Anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. So, the protection from elites mod that's slotted in is a 12%. You get anywhere from 11 to 13 generally drop on the floor. 11s are quite common, 12s are reasonably common, and 13s are as rare as rocking horse shit, so we won't even bother trying to aim for the 13s. We'll just see if we can get the 12s. If you can use 12s, great. If you have to go with 11, fine. For now, try and find those 12s if you can. The talent resourceful, so this is what we're talking about. Basically, if you've got a gear set or a brand set, it's going to add 1 to that requirement. So if you've got 1 piece, it's going to be 2. If you've got 2 pieces, it's going to be 3. If you have 3 pieces, it's going to be 4. So we use that because the gear set, the brand set that we're using will allow us to reach additional bonuses. So the first one that we're using is the Golden Gear Mask. So the Golden Gear Mask with 2 pieces will give us status effects and 1.5% armor regen. This comes rolled with armor, armor regen, hazard protection, and a protection from elites mod. Now, just before we jump further ahead, some people may say, well, hang on a minute, why don't you use the Chill Out Mask? I do have another build where I do this, and the main reason why I'm not using the Chill Out Mask is because I want the additional role of hazard protection rather than protection from elites. Should we have taken the additional role of protection from elites in the season right now, we'd be over the cap. I'll show more about this as we get to it and sort of give you a heads up as we sort of fall on this topic. Okay, so I'm using 2 pieces of Gila which will top me up to 3. The bonuses from Gila are total armor 5%, 60% extra health, and 2% armor regen. The armor regen is the main thing that we're really aiming for. So this comes rolled with 170,000 armor, hazard protection, armor regen, and protection from elites. And the talent here is Unbreakable. Now, because we don't have that backpack talent, we don't have, say, Adrenaline Rush or something else to assist us, this is going to help us sort of tank damage from non-elite enemies. It's going to be useful. There's going to be times where you just sort of push in too hard and you just, you know, what would have normally killed you, you'll get an extra life bar and you can just get out of the way, go in, sort of reassess the situation and come back again at a different angle. So that's quite useful to help us save our life if we do something silly. And then for the second piece, we're using gloves. Okay, so a Gila glove, and this is just rolled exactly the same way. It's got total armor, armor regen, and hazard protection. So just pretty much the same all across the board, apart from 1 piece. We have 1 piece of Bellstone Armory, and what that's going to do is give us the 1% armor regen, the thing that we're chasing, and then 10% armor on kill. Now, I've already discussed that we're using preservation. If we do get a headshot kill, we get 20% of our armor over 10 seconds. This is going to add another 10 instantly. So potentially, if we get a kill, we're going to get up to 30% armor on kill. Quite nice. It's not going to happen quite as much as a damage build, but we do get kills. And the best way to use this, really, stacked up with the health damage on the assault rifle and the headshot damage, is if you get hurt, try and turn your focus to the weaker enemies, the red enemies or the purple enemies, and try and dispatch those enemies to gain some extra health if you don't want to use the medkit. Okay, so the very difficult piece that not everybody's going to have, but you can change out. One thing that I could suggest here, if you don't have the Emperor's Guard rolled with double crit, You could use something different like a Palisade Steelwork. That's going to give you another 10% armor on kill, but you can really use anything that you want here. Again, maybe even a Badger Tough piece, which would give you shotgun damage and an extra 5% total armor. That's all good. Anything you can use here, but really, this is the one that I'm looking for. I have a Emperor's Guard, which is a piece of Murakami. This is going to give us skill duration and repair skill. Both of these things really aren't going to do much for us, unfortunately. The skill duration will affect the hive, so we can leave it on the floor for 15% longer. The 35% repair skill is going to do absolutely nothing for us because we have no repair skill whatsoever. I've rolled armor on this one, usually comes with a skill tier, and I've been lucky enough to get one that has armor regen and armor on it, so that's quite useful. That's how we kind of want it. Again, you could probably have a roll of hazard protection if you had something slightly different, and maybe even have a yellow tier on here if you wanted to, and you had double regen. That would also be okay, bearing in mind you're going to have less armor. Okay, with that said, I have the Reviver Hive. I have 2 charges in my Reviver Hive, which is quite nice. Obviously, one because of the backpack, and then I can gain an additional charge with my pistol if I hold it. That brings it up to 3. And then, no surprise, we're using the Crusader Shield. So the shield basically is just going to help us block damage and give us that extra bit of health that the enemies have to shoot through before they even reach our armor. And we have the fire grenades, the incendiary fire grenades. These are quite useful to proc the status effect for the tack link, for the specialization, and also just to slow enemies down, stop them shooting at you. It is quite useful. The fire grenades are always quite handy. Okay, so where I'd normally go over the stat sheet, the thing that I want to do now is just come in here, and what I'll do is you'll see that I've got a little number 2 next to the activate target rich environment, and then my blue is flashing, and then the yellow is at 2. So when we equip this build with the seasonal modifiers on, I will be at level 4 automatically. So all we need to do is get to level 5. So what I've done here is activate target rich environment. You can change this to the tack link or anything else that would give you damage. However, the main 2 pieces that I'm using that affect this build for the season, which is super useful, is extra padding. So gain 5% protection from elites per blue core while at tier 5. Again, that's why we have to be at tier 5. We also have hazard protection is increased by 7.5% for each stamina tier that we have. So again, that's going to be super useful. So this brings us to the section about talking about the hazard protection rather than something else. So the reason that we've got the hazard protection is because we're stacking up on that, and it allows the bonuses when we go into the bonuses, skipping over the skill tree that we'll do in just a minute, to basically get up to quite a high amount. I've got 87.5% hazard protection in everything, and I also have 76, and this is hence the reason why I didn't take the chill out mask, because if I had another 12% in, we're only going to gain effectively 4% from that before we reach the cap, and then we're completely nerfed. Anything over that is just, it's not going to help. It's not going to do anything for us. So we're so close to the cap there that we can take additional hazard protection. Hazard protection, why does it help? Especially when you're fighting things like hunters, they disrupt your skills, so you will lose your hive and your shield for a reasonable amount of time. This really takes the sort of heat out of that and really makes it so it's only a very short amount of time. Again, bleed, fire, it's going to mitigate a lot of that additional damage that your armor is not going to be able to take alone. So quite useful. The only thing that we're quite susceptible to really is explosives, but that's something in itself. So what I want to do is I'm going to turn off the seasonal modifiers now that we've had a look at that, and I will show the core stats, because that's something that you need to be aware of, because outside of the season this build is also very good. I'm going to deactivate these now, and now we can have a look at the stat sheet. Okay, oops. Okay, so we go to the stat sheet. We can have a look at the weapon talents. We're using preservation, septic shock, and preservation. We also have the crossbow. So weapon damage is quite low. We only really have one tier into skill damage, weapon damage, excuse me, and it's not really going to offer a lot. We do have a reasonable amount of headshot damage, which is good for when we're aiming at the head. Okay, so crit chance is low all round as well. Again, pretty much the same story here. Okay. Gear talents are resourceful, unbreakable, and for the gear sets we have 2 pieces of Golan, the Ninja Bike backpack, 3 pieces of Gila, 2 pieces of Bellstone, and 2 pieces of Murakami, but all importantly that's the Emperor's Guard. This is the one that you can switch out if you chose to. We just have a little over 2 million armor, and that's because of expertise ranks as well, so please bear that in mind. We're gaining 200,000 armor on kill just on a baseline, so 10%, but we also have an additional 20% on top of that if we get a kill with preservation, if we get a headshot, and 10 if we just get a body shot. So, you know, that's quite useful and can help. The big one here really is the armor regeneration straight off the bat. There's no charging at all. We are sat always at 135,000 armor regeneration, which is a lot. It's a lot just in itself, and the fact that if you get an armor on kill or kill an enemy, it's going to be even more than that. It's going to be crazy numbers, so useful. We have a little bit more health than normal as well, which is useful if we get down lower, and we'll see that our stats are only 46% protection from elites. If that was higher, we'd reach the cap, and then it would be a waste. But we also have 50% hazard protection, okay, normally, which it's really going to take a lot of the sting out of a lot of the status effects. It's half the time that you're going to be status affected, and with things like disrupt that take away your hive and your shield, it's half the amount of time that you're spending without those skills being disrupted. Handy for things like the hunters and other enemies that might disrupt you. We also have the hive. Again, we've got the skill haste on in the range, but you know it's going to be a slow deal with this coming back. We can affect that by getting into cover, and the shield, which is skill tier 6. So the main things to note really about the build is that if we mark targets, everybody's going to do more damage to them. When they're on status effect and they have the mark, that's going to allow your team to do 30% extra damage. Let's just hurt ourselves a little bit here and look at the regen. As we can see, nice and quick regen. But what's really nice is if we, on top of that, get a headshot kill. Now we can see some really ridiculous regen. That's crazy. Okay, so the main things really to remember is just that, you know, if you get in a bit of a pinch and you do lose all your armor, you know, you break. You've got unbreakable. That will allow you to get away. You also have your pistol, which you can switch to and potentially pick up 3 teammates, so the entire team, if you so please. We have fire grenades as well, which can slow enemies down and also get that tack link, as well as the crossbow as well, which also makes enemies bleed. Other than that, should you see a teammate that's been hurt and you're feeling generous, you can also share a medkit with them as well. Alright, I hope this build breakdown went okay. I know I made a few slip-ups there while I was talking. This is always live and sort of off the cuff. So I hope this one is one that you'll go on to enjoy and try. Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one.